Oh, God. Hey, everybody. This is Handsome Aaron, and I just watched Revenge of the Sith. Dear God, we have to talk about this movie. Um, so let's just get right into it because I have a whole lot that I need to get through here. First off, something I want to say now, so I don't have to say it throughout the movie. Like the previous ones, most of the movie is generally quite boring. So just know that as I describe this, uh, it doesn't have some of the problems of other ones. It's actually not as boring. I was more engaged with this one because it at least had more of a plot than the previous two. Things were happening in the movie. It doesn't have the same problem of the second one, as bad, of scenes just kind of starting and stopping and really weird transitions. It happens sometimes, and I'll mention them, but it doesn't have that problem. But this one is honestly, this movie is like exhausting. It's genuinely just like hard to get through. Not because of the other ones were hard to get through too because they were frustrating and 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 generally quite boring. But this one's like exhausting. I just finished it and I just feel tired. That might be because it's very late, but yeah, like the others. Actually, you know what? This one is about the same length as the other two as well. And unlike those two, it did feel about 2 hours long, whereas the others felt like 50 million hours. Um, so let's get into it. I want to talk about, before we even get to the movie, this is just something I've been thinking about for a little while. I kind of thought of this in between the first two movies, but it really solidified during this big battle. The movie starts with this big space battle. It's not clear what's happening or anything like that. You just jump into it, which is, well, I don't know. It's not really fun. Like, there's just no context to who's winning or what's where or what's going on, really. But so this is more broad. This is about the Clone Wars. I have to just say an observation, which is that these two armies, the two armies are the Confederacy and their droids, and not the Federation, the Republic and their clones. And neither of these armies, to me, make any sense. Look at my hands. Make any sense at this point in their conflict. It's implied that they've been fighting for a little while, but it can't be too long. Like a couple of years, 3, maybe 4 years, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, for some reason they made the decision, as in the writers made the decision, George Lucas, that no actual people should be fighting in this war. That it should be this massive, crazy conflict that's tearing the whole galaxy apart, but that everyone should just kind of be inconvenienced by it because all of the actual fighting and dying is happening to either just machines or clones that nobody cares about. It's a weird decision. There is no humanity to this conflict. It's yeah. Like, even if you don't care about the rebel soldiers as individuals, you recognize, in the original 4 movies, you recognize those are people. But yeah, here it's like intentionally as sanitized as you can make a massive war. But why these factions are even using these armies, I don't think really makes too much sense when you think about it. I don't know why they would be using droids. Well, I don't know. The droids are a little bit better. Because the thing about the droids is, The thing about the droids is that in the first movie, I get why they were using droids. They're like a company, a private corporation, and they want to invade a planet. You're not going to get people to like agree to do that. It makes sense to buy a bunch of droids. I don't know if I ever talked about this before, but I kind of headcanoned it that the droid army in the first movie was like meant to be security robots that they like upgraded into war robots. That's not what's supposed to be happening, but it always made more sense to me, and I like to think of it that way. But that's not what's happening. And in the second one, it still kind of makes sense. They have thousands of planets, supposedly, that are in support of them. But you do see that the Geonosians are helping. The Geonosians have their own army. Geonosians, I don't know what it's supposed to be. And they're kind of helping, but they're also trying to keep it a secret, so having these hidden factories building battle droids still makes sense. But where it kind of starts to break down is in the logic of this movie, because the war is like fully on now at this point, and they have thousands and thousands of planets supposedly that are helping them. So why can't they get actual people to agree to help and fight the war if they believe in this cause, and then use all those factories that you are using and materials that you're using to build soldiers to instead build more weapons and battleships? But I can kind of see it. You know, you can make soldiers. It kind of makes sense to me why they would turn to the use droids. But the clones make no sense. As far as we know, only Kamino is making these clones. Like, they can build more droid factories. They seem pretty common in this world. Droids in general seem very common. They're all over the place in Star Wars. But we know that Kamino was kind of an exception, being this world that was able to make clone armies. That was weird. So where the fuck are all these clones coming from? The Kamino only, in 10 years, had only made 200,000 clones. And they said 1 million more on the way. I know this is nitpicky, but they're the ones that started throwing out specific numbers. I'm going to hold them to that. They didn't have to do it. So yeah, where the fuck are all these clones coming from? How are they fighting a war across the entire galaxy relying on these clones? And why are they, just like the droids and the Separatists, it's like, why can't the Federation get non-clones to volunteer to fight? I mean, we like, like if they needed to make more clones, yeah, no, there's nothing that they could do to make the clones start coming out faster, because we know that the Kamino grow them, and that they do age quicker, but it was only like twice as fast, and they still needed to be like trained and stuff. Droids you can make and turn on and send it out to fight that same day, but the clones are made as babies, and they have to be raised and trained and everything. So the 200,000 guys that they had were, I mean, if the war lasted a couple years, they might get another like wave of the ones that were being trained at the time when the war broke out. But my point is that they cannot possibly have enough clones to fight this war. Based on the information we were given in the previous movie, there's just no way. It doesn't make sense. And also, unlike the battle droids, the clones have a pretty big problem in that they're people. They're like living beings with thoughts and feelings of their own. They're like, they're slaves, is my point. Is that this republic is perfectly okay with inventing a slave race of soldier clones that go off and die by the millions, even though there couldn't possibly be millions of them, but send off to die by the millions for a government that they're not a part of and a society that they can never belong to. It's incredibly fucked up when you realize that, like, yeah, the clones are slaves. I don't think that they volunteered for this. They can't have volunteered for this. I can't imagine they have a vote. Do the clones have a representative in the Senate? No, you're just told that they're like that their brains are fucked with to be like complacent, and that makes it okay, I guess. But no, it's incredibly fucked up. Fuck the Republic. Again, this movie's almost like about look at the downfall of this democracy, isn't it terrible? But it's like this democracy has been being defended by slave clone soldiers for years. It was fucked up long before this happened. And why is the war even called the Clone Wars? Like, that's weird. The reason it's called the Clone Wars is because I'm pretty sure they mention the Clone Wars in Episode 4. Like, Obi-Wan or Luke says something about the Clone Wars. And so, like everything else in this trilogy, if it's in the original trilogy, then it has to be the most important thing ever in this trilogy. So they decided that the whole thing would revolve around the Clone Wars, rather than just have that be an event that happened. But the Clone Wars, it's named after the clones. But it's like, it's not like both forces in this war are using clones, or the clones are new technology, or clones, or is a war about clones, like the whole slavery thing, like it was about, like, some people not being okay with slave clone soldiers, and so they started fighting a war over it, or if the clones formed their own government and they went to war with that. Those would all make sense to call it the Clone War. Actually, it being plural doesn't make any sense either. Like, some things wars are referred to in the plural, like the Napoleonic Wars, but it's because France, under Napoleon, went to war with a number of different countries, like Britain and Italy and Russia and Prussia and the Germanic states. But those are all like separate conflicts that all get umbrellaed under the Napoleonic Wars. So why it's called the Clone Wars rather than the Clone War, I don't know. This is just a single massive civil conflict. But like all those explanations, all those examples I just gave, that would make sense why you would call it the Clone Wars. But here, the clones are just like a detail. They're just a weapon being utilized exclusively by one side of the conflict. They're not a new weapon or a super weapon. Like we have like the concept of a nuclear war, but that's a super. The clones are just there, and potentially, if someone walked into this and they didn't already know that the clone troopers were clones, they probably wouldn't figure it out, because the war has nothing to do with the clones. They're just a weapon utilized by one side. So they didn't even think through why it would be called this. It just is. Again, because they mention it in Episode 4. So I got that out of the way. That's not like an event that happens in the movie. It's just something I wanted to talk about. The movie begins. The opening text scroll says that there are heroes on both sides and evil is everywhere. I have no idea what that's even talking about or referencing. I just feel like the text scroll, they just needed to fill it with words. So the movie starts and there's this big, crazy space battle. That the whole battle, this whole opening sequence, feels like it exists entirely for the sake of creating Star Wars Battlefront. The Star Wars Battlefront 2. Like that's what a lot of these trilogies feel like. But this battle at the beginning, this space battle, just feels like, is this all just here because they knew they wanted to make Star Wars Battlefront and they just needed like more shit to put in? And immediately, something I noticed is that this movie does look better than the previous two, especially Attack of the Clones. Like, it just looks nicer. I think there's a better CGI and stuff, which is good because so much of the movie relies on the CGI and everything that it's good that at least looks better now. That being said, it is still completely bloated. Like, it looks nicer, but it's still just as much shit shoved in there as they can get. Like, especially this opening big space battle. It's just things flying around and exploding and all over the place, and it's like I don't know what's even happening. Oh, during the big space battle too, the cartoon rockets from the second one are back. The cartoon rockets that will like follow around. I said that in the second one that they reminded me of Looney Tunes. Those are back, and they made me smile. Just because, again, they made me think of the Looney Tunes. Um, uh, so, something else I like about this opening space battle too, actually, is there's a part where the droids send all these little tiny droids. They call them buzz droids. I wrote it down, and they get all over Anakin and Obi-Wan's ships, and they start like tearing it apart. They like attach to it, and I thought that was neat. I like those little buzz droids, and I think that's a cool concept of like sending tiny robots as like a weapon that cling onto the ships and start ripping it apart. I think that was a really neat concept, and I liked those little droids. That being said, I did immediately start thinking, why don't they just use the Force to push the droids off of them out into space? Um, they never really think like that. That would be a perfect opportunity to use the Force. It was my first thought, just like go and shove them off. You shove robots around with the Force all the time. Why is this a problem? Um, and then one of the buzz droids has a little fight with R2, and it's one of the silliest, like not in a fun way. It's just lame. And they treat it like really intensely. Anakin's like looking over, all like, "Oh, R2, come on, fight the little buzz droid," and it's just silly. So they kind of ruined it, but it's a neat idea. Again, I like those buzz droids. Those should have been in Star Wars Battlefront. Um, then they have to get inside this ship, and for some reason, a thing that lowers the shields on the ship, on the hangar, is on the outside of the ship, and it's right there next to the thing. So they just like sprinkle it with lasers for a second, and the whole shield comes down. It's like they need to have a word with whoever designed that. Um, we need a prequel movie to explain why the Separatist ships have that design flaw. It's Rogue One, right? Because that's what Star Wars is. Um, st- that would be a great movie. Every complaint that I've had in this series, in these three videos, I demand they make a prequel movie to explain why it's not actually a plot hole. Um, so then they get into the ship and they start destroying the battle droids in the hangar, and I gotta say, just like in the previous movie, I talked about this in the previous movie, I really like the battle droids. In fact, I like them even more in this movie. Um, they talk a lot more, the battle droids and everything. At least in this opening scene, they don't do it as much later, but they talk more, and they all have this really like cute kind of mechanical voice, and they're just, again, just like the other ones, they're so pathetically mismatched against the Jedi that you just feel bad for them. Like the movie even treats it that they have no hope of winning, that they're not even a real threat. So you just feel bad for them when they're being torn apart. There's even a part later where they're like unarmed and they're like cowering. It's when the Jedi make their way up to the bridge of Grievous's ship here. They're like running away, and they're like trying to run away and escape the room. And again, you just feel bad for them. You want the battle droids to win because they're the clear underdog in these scenarios. And like I say, they're in this movie. They make them even more like adorable with their little voice, and they talk to each other. One of them makes a joke like he brings General Grievous Anakin and Obi-Wan's lightsabers, and he like takes it out of his hand and he just goes, "You're welcome." And it's like cute little robot voice, and it's like I want these things to kill the protagonists because I like them more. Oh, I also noticed in this movie. I don't know if this is in other movies, but I just noticed it in this one that they have Star Trek colors on the droids too. Like in Star Trek, they wear everyone. If you haven't seen Star Trek, in Star Trek, the Federation crew members, they wear different color shirts to show what rank they are: red, yellow, or blue. Not their rank, but their job. And I just noticed in this one, again, it might have been in the previous ones, but the battle droids are also painted red, yellow, and blue to indicate what their job is on these ships. And it's even like around the shoulders, which is kind of how they are. Well, it's the opposite in Deep Space Nine and everything. But the point is, they have like Star Trek colors on the droids too. And I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah. Oh, there's also a point where R2 lights the two battle droids on fire, the silver ones, the super battle droids, and it like immediately destroys them. And it's just like a little stupid, silly joke scene. But it is weird that, I mean, surprising that apparently fire is super effective against these robots. Wouldn't have thought that, but yep, R2 lights two of them on fire and they instantly die, so. So then they go to rescue Palpatine, and he's in this room, like he's their prisoner, but they put him in like a throne that he's kind of attached to in this big, and I'm just like wondering what this room is. Is this supposed to be like an interrogation chamber? I get that the idea is that the room is supposed to look like the room in Episode 6. And that's why, for some reason, their prisoner is in a big, crazy throne, is because it's supposed to look like Episode 6. For some reason. Yeah, I just got wondering what it is. But, okay, so here's the thing. Count Dooku shows up. Christopher Lee. And he does a stupid-looking flip down from the Raptors. I was like, why the hell did you just do that? People are constantly doing stupid-looking flips in these movies, and I don't get why. They don't look good, and they're pointless. But they start to fight, and, one, I don't get why Count Dooku didn't bring more people to help him, like they knew that the guys were here, intruders. He should have brought, like, 10,000 battle droids with him, and they should have just shot Anakin and Obi-Wan. But he didn't. He brought 2, and they just sit there and watch. Why not escape with Palpatine? So then they fight, and Count Dooku loses, and I don't get why Count Dooku is doing what he's doing in this scene. He didn't bring any help, but he also doesn't... See, the thing is that Count Dooku, presumably, he must know that Palpatine is Sidious, is his master. Like, this is the guy that's been training him. They hang out together in person. He must know that Palpatine is his master, but for some reason, he doesn't, like, ask Palpatine to help him. And if you're thinking, well, it's because they're trying to stay covered. No. The goal here is to just kill Anakin from from Dooku's perspective. It's to kill Anakin and Obi-Wan. So I don't get why Count Dooku isn't like, hey, Master Sidious, help me kill these two. Like, stand up from your stupid throne chair that we have you locked in for some reason and help me kill these two. And then when he loses the fight, he's just sitting there and Anakin's got the lightsabers to cut his head off. And he doesn't say anything. Dooku doesn't, like, beg for his life. He doesn't, again, be like, hey, wait. That guy's a fucking Sith Lord. Like, don't kill me. Or be like, hey, now would be the time to help me here, Sidious. the only thing that possibly makes sense is that he's not supposed to know that Palpatine is Sidious, but that also doesn't make sense and is obviously very, very stupid that he wouldn't know that. Because again, he hangs out with this guy. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. However, as stupid as the scene is, it is saved by the best line in any of these three Star Wars movies, which is "Do it." I love that line. I say it all the time. Do it. I love the Emperor in general in this movie. Do it. It's just fun to say. um, Ejecting shells. Oh yeah. Okay. So then they leave. They kill Dooku. They move on. There's just one thing I wanted to point out, which is you see the ships, these droid ships and these clone ships shooting at each other, and the clone ships have these big, or is it the droid ships? I don't know. One of them has these big cannons that you see firing, and they look like old school, like World War II, like howitzer cannons, and they're like ejecting shells, like big metal shells out the back of them. And it's like, I get it. I get you're trying to go for the World War II looking things, and I think it actually looks pretty cool. But it's like, nothing else in Star Wars has ever done that. What are these shells even doing? Are they batteries? I don't know. I mean, it looks neat. It's just something that I noticed. This isn't like a complaint necessarily. It's just, again, just something that I noticed. That's what that's what all these are supposed to be. Is most of them are complaints, but a lot of them are just things that I noticed. Then they activate these. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Palpatine are like running through the ship. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know where they're going. They're just sprinting around on this ship. I don't. Are they trying to get back to the hangar? Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, what is their plan? What are they trying to do? I have no idea where they're going. Like the ships that they boarded the ship in were also like one-man fighter crafts that were heavily damaged. So I have no idea what their plan was for after they got Palpatine. Were they planning on fighting their way to the bridge and then just like hijacking the entire ship and crash landing it on Coruscant? Because if that's the case, why even get the Emperor first? Or the Chancellor? Just hide. And if that is so like doable, if that's like a realistic plan, why aren't they just destroying enemy ships like that all the time? Just boarding them with Jedi and hijacking them. Yeah, I have no idea where they're going or what their plan was. They don't seem to have one. Their plan was to wait for the writer to create a ridiculous scenario in which they can escape. But while they're running through the ship, Grievous just says, activate the ray shields. And then these ray shields come down and instantly capture the three of them. And it's like, oh, that was oddly effective. That was extremely easy. Just when Grievous was sick of them running around his ship, he just activated the ray shields and just like that defeated them. Like, they make no attempt to escape. They act as if that there is nothing they can do about ray shields. So why aren't they doing that more often? Why are they doing that all the time? I don't know. It's just like when the writer wanted them to be captured so they can be brought to the bridge, these ray shields suddenly exist, and they're the first time in the entire show where there is fuck all the Jedi can do about it. They don't even try. Like, they accept that the moment the ray shields turn on, they are defeated. So yeah, then they're brought to the bridge for some reason, where they easily defeat Grievous. It's like, for some reason, Grievous had them brought to him on the bridge. And he tied their hands up, but he also put lightsabers there in the room, even though they can move things with their mind. The whole scenario is stupid. They should have been brought to the bridge where they not the bridge, the brig, the prison, where they would just be detained until the battle is over. But for some reason, they're immediately brought to Grievous on the bridge so they can hijack the ship. And then there's like these droids. I guess they're like Grievous's bodyguards, but they have these like electric stabs. Can I just say how dumb it is that that's a thing? That there would be people running around in this movie, in this universe, who use like melee weapons other than the Jedi, who have the special magical laser swords. I don't like that. Like, even conceptually, there should not be other people running around trying to use melee weapons in this universe with guns. The Jedi are different. They're like an exception, and I think it's a bad idea, even conceptually, to start having other people who do shit like that. So yeah, I don't like these bodyguard robots. And then Grievous just kind of accepts that his ship is lost and leaves. Like, he just leaves the flagship because there are two guys with laser swords on it. So then they they hijack the whole ship. I guess the two of them can do that. Fly this massive thing. Whatever. I'm fine with that. They can't fly it very well, so at least that's good. I'm seeing in my teeth. That's probably gross. So then they kind of crash landed on the Coruscant, this thing, and they happened to crash land it onto a inexplicable modern day airport in the middle of this city, and it's even got like modern day towers, like air traffic control towers. There's never been anything like that anywhere else in these movies. Most of the time in these movies, ships can just take off, like float into the air and leave. But they happen to crash land on this massive runway in the middle of the city. It's incredibly stupid. And it just left me thinking, like, did all the droids get off the ship, or is this ship that's now landed still full of enemy soldiers? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's just a thought that occurred to me. But here's the thing. The battle, that space battle, is so pointless that we don't even know what happens. Like, once they crash land, the space battle above is never mentioned again because it was just a pointless, like, set piece. It matters so little, we're not even informed what happens after Anakin and Obi-Wan leave. I presumably the Republic forces win, I guess, but we don't know. We don't know what happens. We don't know. And actually, the whole point of the battle was that the battle droids, Grievous was trying to capture and kidnap Palpatine, which he had successfully done. And that kind of raises the question of why, once they had him and they got him on the flagship, they didn't just fuck off. Like, if the point of the battle was just to capture him, why didn't they leave as soon as he was securely aboard their ship? They just hung out, waiting for him to be rescued and their flagship to be destroyed. And if it wasn't just that they were there to get him and then leave, then it seems kind of important to know whether or not they won the battle, because it seems like they would have had other ambitions. I don't know. That's just how little it matters, how little the movie cares about these kinds of things. So that's the first 25 minutes of the movie, or 23 minutes. I paused it and looked. The first 23 minutes of the movie is this battle that has no real consequence. The enemy, off-screen, just before the movie began, kidnapped the guy. Palpatine. But then he was rescued, and now he's right back where he started. The only point to it was that Dooku dies. Is that Anakin beheads Dooku, and I guess that's supposed to be like a character moment for Anakin. Although it just kind of happens. And Dooku's out of the picture now. But here's the thing about Dooku being out of the picture. I got thinking about this. Is that Count Dooku and General Grievous are the same person. And Count Dooku dying and being out of the game has no effect on anything. Count Dooku and General Grievous are both people that we basically know fuck all about and who don't really matter, but they both serve the exact same purpose. Dooku was, in the second movie, Dooku was the guy at the head of this whole separatist thing, and he was the lightsaber guy with a lightsaber for the protagonists to have a lightsaber fight with. That was his role in the movie. The guy at the head of the separatists, and the guy that they could fight with a lightsaber. But General Grievous is also just that. Once Dooku's dead, it's just, oh, now General Grievous is the head of this whole thing. He's the mini boss fight. For this movie, he's the guy with the lightsaber who's vaguely in charge of this droid army and who we have to beat for the movie to be over, which is exactly what Dooku was in the second one. So they killed off Dooku and then just brought in another one to pick up right where he left off, so nothing really changes. If you think about it, if the movie had just been written slightly differently, so Dooku didn't get his head chopped off there and then Grievous just didn't exist, the movie would still play out exactly the same. It would just be Dooku doing all the things Grievous is doing. Because as we find out later, Grievous, even just like Dooku, takes orders from Palpatine and thinks of Palpatine as his master, just like Dooku. It's incredibly strange, and I think it's just... Who knows, maybe they didn't want to, pay Christopher Lee to be in any more of the movie. Maybe Christopher Lee didn't want to be in. But I suspect it's just that they already had... Because George Lucas is, a child, and he already had them fight Count Dooku, and he just wanted to see them fight a robot with lightsabers instead. So he just got Count Dooku out of the way in the first act of the movie, first scene of the movie. So they could bring in a robot with 4 lightsabers. He's got even more lightsabers. I am so shocked that they didn't just make all of his lightsabers red as well, Grievous. I get that he's supposed to have collected them from dead Jedi, but I wouldn't put him past them. Because the bad guys have the red lightsabers. That's how these movies are written. Yeah. But that's all he is. They're just mini boss fights. That's all Darth Maul was, that's all Dooku was, and that's all Grievous is. They're all the same character. They're just the guy with the lightsaber that they can have a scene with lots of lightsabers hitting each other. You know what's kind of funny too is I got thinking about this after I realized that they got rid of Count Dooku and then replaced him with Grievous, who's basically the same guy. Plays the same role in the movie. They do the same thing again in Episode 9. In Episode 9, in the sequel trilogy, there's a guy named Hux. General Hux, Admiral Hux, I don't remember. It's just... and then they decide to get rid of him, and they have him get killed off. If I do all 9 of these Star Wars movies, I'll probably talk about this again, but Hux get killed by this other guy. I don't even know that guy's name. But he just is also... He's just Hux. So they do the same thing there. They kill off Hux and replace him with another guy who functionally is just Hux. And they do the same thing here. Dooku gets killed off, and they immediately replace him with Grievous, who is just doing all the same things Dooku would be doing. Let's turn to the next page of my notes. So they get back down to the planet, and they have this stupid conversation. Anakin they, all this dialogue in these scenes. So what I think is really funny, they get back onto the planet, and I think they're talking Anakin and Obi-Wan talking about like who should go get credit for this or talk to like the press or something like that. And Anakin says that this whole operation was your idea to Obi-Wan, and it's like, what operation is he referring to? Does he mean the space battle in general? Was it it was Obi-Wan's idea to go fight the enemy fleet that's in orbit around our capital planet? Or does he specifically mean going and rescuing Palpatine? Because not only is that also a really obvious thing to try to go do, but it was also a horrible, horrible plan that worked because the writers, I mean the Force, was on their side. Um, their plan was to just get in two tiny spaceships and send two guys to just run around the enemy ship, hitting things with lightsabers until they find the guy, and then just hope that an opportunity to escape presents itself. Also, in this conversation, they do this thing where Anakin says, "This is the 10th time I've saved you," and he's like, "9th time," and it's like, just telling us that they've had all these adventures together is not good enough. It's such poor writing, like amateurish writing. It feels like something I would write because I'm not a good writer, but that genuinely feels like something I would write in a thing to try to quickly establish a relationship between two characters. Then they have a weird conversation, and with I think it's Palpatine and Mace Windu, and Palpatine says that the Senate will continue to vote to continue the war until Grievous is dead. And it's like, does that make any sense to anyone? One, this movie has an incredibly strange idea about how wars work. Because there's these battles happening. They're flying around the galaxy. You see them all fighting each other and trying to control these worlds. But at the same time, the movie kind of almost treats it like the way that you win a war is just to like assassinate all of the enemy's leaders. Or kidnap them, I guess. The droid army's big plan is to kidnap Palpatine. And then in the second one, it's like, we can end this whole thing if we kill Dooku. And then here it's like, we can end this whole thing if we kill Grievous. And then later that's kind of extended to kill all the separatist guys from the second movie. Like that big council of aliens. And they do just treat it like once these guys are dead, the war is over. As if this isn't like a huge movement with trillions of people and massive armies and fleets. And that's just not how wars work. Like, the leader dying doesn't mean it's over. When John Wilkes Booth killed Lincoln, it's not like the Union surrendered to the Confederates. No, they just kept going. Like, it's too bad. It can be demoralizing. If that person was, like, really good at their job, it can be a detriment, but it's not like wars are over the moment the leader is dead. Grievous isn't even their leader in like a political sense. He's in command of their military. All of the people supporting this war would still be around. It doesn't make any sense. Like it's like such a childish concept to how you conduct a war, and it makes all these battles they're fighting all over the place seem pointless. If the way that they're treating it is, if Grievous is dead, the war is over, then why are they even fighting on all these other worlds? But also, what does it mean that the Senate will continue to vote to continue the war? What does that mean? Is he saying that once Grievous is dead, they won't vote to continue the war? Like, once Grievous is dead, suddenly they'll be okay with surrendering or negotiating? Like, it's just a line that makes no sense. It sounds like it makes sense, I guess, but when you think about it, it's like, what does that mean? He's because that's what it means. Is the inverse of it is that once Grievous is dead, they'll stop voting to continue the war. Like they'll be okay with the Confederacy existing just once Grievous is dead. When what they're trying to do is to get the Confederacy to surrender, to get the Confederacy to stop wanting to continue the war. I don't know. I guess again the movie's operating on this like little kid logic that once Grievous is dead, the war is over. There's this really funny shot in the next bit where Padme is like for some reason just like hiding in the darkness, watching them silently. It's really funny, and she's dressed. Padme dresses so weird in this movie. She dressed weird in the other movies too, but it was in this like these kind of odd, horny outfits, like the black leather BDSM outfit and the sexy white dress. But in this one, she dresses just really strange. It's not like horny strange like in the previous one. They're just like weird outfits. In this scene, she has the Princess Leia hair too for some reason. I guess just because why not? So they're in this massive room, and it seems to be almost like an entryway into, I don't know, maybe the Senate chambers. It's not really clear, but it's this huge open room with these big pillars everywhere, and it's in this room that the two of them start like kissing and having like an intimate moment and talking about how they don't want to keep it a secret anymore. And it's like, well, gosh, with how shit you seem to be at keeping this a secret, it seems like this is a problem that will solve itself. They're just making out in the middle of this room and hoping nobody notices them. It's so awful. So that's just something that made me laugh. So okay, then we cut to like Grievous and they're hanging out. I don't know, but one I want to say, Grievous is an odd-looking robot. I think if I just saw his design, like it's like a model doing like the Titanic pose that they put models in, I'd think, he looks all right. I don't really get what they're going for, but he looks fine. But the way he's animated, the way he moves, he just looks silly. I don't know why they chose to make him move the way he does with this sort of bird walk, and like he's all hunched over like an old man, even though he's a nearly indestructible machine. He wears a cloak. I don't know what that's about. I mean, if you want to be a robot that wears clothes, go for it. But either wear actual clothes like an outfit, or don't wear anything. Just wearing a cloak is strange. Yeah, so I mentioned this before too, but for some reason, and it's because again, Grievous is just Dooku, and Dooku was basically just Darth Maul. They're all just mini bosses. But for some reason, Grievous also works for Palpatine. I have no idea what the logic was behind having everyone in all of the bad guys in these movies just all secretly work for Palpatine, and there's no reason for it. There's no reason. Well, I guess there is. It's so Palpatine would know that the Confederate leaders were on Mustafar at the end. I guess is the only reason to have this really quick scene where, again, just like Dooku, just like everyone else, we never learn why Palpatine takes orders from, or not Palpatine, why Grievous takes orders from Palpatine. He just does, and the movie just wants you to accept that. He's the general of this massive army in charge of just all these battle droids, He has the trust of the Confederate leaders, all this stuff, but he just secretly works for an evil space wizard. Because why not? Because the movie doesn't give a shit. He just does. Um, uh, yeah, and then he just like agrees to move all the leaders to Mustafar, the leaders of the Confederacy, and I have no idea why. He just he just does it. Um, and again, it's almost like it why? How are these guys even the Confederate leaders? Because it treats the leaders of these movements like a game of capture the flag. The leaders aren't like on whatever planet the Confederacy is using as their home world, governing this new nation that they're building. No, they're just hiding somewhere so they can't be captured or killed. Like they're just an objective that the enemy has to get to win. Again, I'll compare it to the American Civil War. The Confederacy, their leaders, they weren't running around hiding. You know where they are. You know where the enemy leaders are. You know where their capital is because that's not how wars work. It isn't just kill those guys and it's over. They're in Richmond, running the Confederacy. Okay, whatever. It's so dumb. Oh, okay. So this is where we get the first scene between Anakin and Padme, where they have just like a dialogue together, um, like in Episode Two. Now, in Episode Two, those were a lot of the scenes. This one feels like one of those scenes from Episode Two, but because it just kind of starts, they're just standing there on the balcony and they're about to start talking, and it's like they're waiting for the cameras to turn on so they can have their conversation. And then they talk for like 30 seconds. The dialogue is really awkward, and then when they run out of things to say, the scene ends. It's just like in Episode Two. The dialogue didn't make me cringe as much. Maybe it's because I don't know. Maybe because unlike in Episode Two, there is actually a plot happening around them rather than just scenes of these awkward conversations. But it didn't feel as bad. It's still bad. Like the dialogue is poorly written, but I don't know. Um, and then the scene just kind of ends, yeah. And it's got another. It's like the transition is like the whole screen turns into a bunch of squares and fades away. I was more aware of it, the weird transitions in that scene because it reminded me of Episode Two. Um, then okay, so then in the next scene, like Anakin has like a bad dream about Padme dying, like he was having about his mom in Episode Two. Um, so he's like, oh, he thinks she's gonna die. They talk about it for a bit, but if someone else can remember this, because I couldn't remember, he grabs her like necklace and he's like, or someone they talk about her necklace and it's like I don't. He apparently he gave her this necklace, and maybe I just don't remember. But was that in Episode One or Two that he gave her that necklace? Because I don't remember that at all. Is this necklace like introduced in this movie? Because they treat it like it's important, like it's symbolic of something. But I don't remember her giving that to her. Did that happen off screen, and we're supposed to think it's meaningful based on an event that happened while we weren't looking? I don't know. It's strange. Maybe I just don't remember. Admittedly, it's hard to keep these fucking movies in my head because they're rough. Yeah. So then, so Padme is going to die in childbirth. Um, in this crazy ass science fiction universe where people can basically be revived from the dead, given robot parts, healed from like laser wounds, how realistic, like people dying in childbirth is even like a possibility? I kind of don't believe you. I just don't believe the movie when it tells me that a woman dying in childbirth, child complications in this universe is even a realistic possibility. At the end of the movie, they put Anakin Anakin has all of his limbs chopped off, and he's set on fire, and they just put him in a suit 30 seconds later, and he's fine. I don't believe the movie when it tells me that that's even a possibility. Um, so yeah, so this scene also raises a weird concern for me. Anakin and Padme are like sleeping in the same bed together, and it's like, do they live together? Like, how do the Jedi work? Apparently, he doesn't have to like live at the temple or anything. Is he just like lying where he is? I guess that must be what it is. It's just sort of a something that popped in. I noticed they seem to live together in this apartment. Again, they're really bad at keeping this whole thing of them in a relationship a secret. Um, and Padme in the scene also says that if the queen would make her quit being a senator when she has her baby, and it's like, why? Again, the movie, just like in the second one, the movie treats Padme being a senator the same way as it treats Anakin being a Jedi. Like, she's not allowed. I mean, yeah, no, why does she have to quit being a senator because she's going to have a baby? That doesn't make any sense. Um, I don't think George Lucas knows what a senator is. Yeah, he doesn't seem to understand a lot of the things that he's trying to talk about in this movie, in these movies. Why are the yeah, and again, I then the Jedi have like a war council meeting where they talk about how things are going on different planets, and it just made me question again why the Jedi are. It's just taken as a given that the Jedi are in charge of this army, why they're the ones getting to conduct this whole war. I just don't get it. I don't get what their job is. Um, and they're like, didn't they have a conversation where it's like, oh, the council is going to vote to give Palpatine even more emergency power? And it's like, okay, that sounds bad, but like, how is that going to help? Why is Palpatine being voted more and more emergency power? How is that helping with the war effort? Why is the war like what emergency powers is he being granted that he doesn't already have? And what? Because here's the thing, it's actually relevant to the whole concept of the Jedi are the ones conducting this war. They seem to be the ones fully in charge of this. So why is Palpatine being granted more and more emergency power to help with the war effort when he's not the one that's actually running the war? The Jedi are. What powers is he being given? Like we're being told that this is a bad thing because in real life that's kind of a bad thing in terms of a democracy. You give one person more and more power and they rise and become a dictator, but like the movie has no interest whatsoever in demonstrating for us what this is doing. What is Palpatine's rise to power doing? Like we're given no context as to what powers he has, what powers he's being given. Is he restricting people's like rights in some way? Is this becoming a dictatorship? We don't know. We're not shown anything about what Palpatine's doing. So the movie wants to be this serious exploration into like the rise of authoritarianism, but without showing us at all what that means or how it affects anyone. Everything is like a flat line. Everything's the same from beginning to end. Until suddenly at the end everything becomes crazy. And even then, it becomes crazy and bad for the Jedi, the people who are opposing the Emperor, but we still don't know how the Emperor is going to change anything about the galaxy. How his rule is going to affect, like, people who live in it. I don't know. It's just, it's... we'll talk about it a little bit more at the end. Let's just move on. Why Anakin? Oh yeah. Oh, whiny Anakin. Yeah, I just wrote down Anakin's really whiny. So Anakin is put on the Jedi Council, and Anakin is point blank told that he's being put on the council. He's told by Palpatine because he said to put Anakin on the council. Like, he's not being chosen by the council and lifted up to their level. He's being appointed by Palpatine, which isn't normally supposed to happen. So the Jedi are kind of making an exception because Palpatine asked them to. And Anakin himself even acknowledges this. When he's told he's being appointed as his eyes and ears on the council, Anakin speaks up and is like, that's not how this works. And he's like, we're making an exception. And even still, in like the next scene when Anakin's told that he's being put on the council, but he's not being made a master, a Jedi master, that would be, you know, this is an exception. This is a weird situation. He starts complaining about how unfair it is that he's not being made a Jedi master. Like, how could I be put on this council and not be made a master? And it's like, dude, you know why you're being put on this council and not being made a master. Like, you yourself understand that this is a weird situation, an unusual situation, and he's still like complaining and whining that he's not being made a master, even though he's also aware that it would be extremely unusual for someone his age to be made a Jedi Master. So he just comes off as a whiny dickhead, who's being given this incredible opportunity and complaining that it's not as an incredible opportunity as he would like it to be. What an asshole. He's just like a whiny bitch. I regret having said that, but he is. There's another. See, this is actually, because I don't know if the movie even makes this clear, but I guess Anakin at this point is supposed to be a Jedi Knight. I don't think the movie ever even makes that explicitly clear at any point. This is the first point in the movie that I realized I don't think that he's supposed to be Obi-Wan's apprentice anymore. Yeah, I don't, unless I missed it, I don't think they ever specify that Anakin is no longer Obi-Wan's apprentice. I think you're just supposed to have figured that out. And this is the scene that made me realize that, because otherwise Anakin would be even more unreasonable, because he'd still be an apprentice and complaining that he's not being made a master without having a period where he's just a Jedi Knight. And that's the thing, yeah, if Anakin is a Jedi Knight, he would have been made one, because I think there's basically the three ranks. You're an apprentice, then a knight, a Padawan, then a knight, then a master. I think it seems to be how it works. So Anakin would have only been a Jedi Knight for, like, I don't know, however long the war has been on. At most, it would have been just after the second movie ended, and right up until this movie begins, which is like 2 or 3 years. He's never even trained a Padawan of his own, and he's so angry that they won't make him a master because Palpatine told them to. Like, what a dick! Just what a dick. Yeah, this is the scene where they're also like, well, we have to defend the Wookiee system. The droid armies are going to invade the Wookiee planet. And it's like, why would the Wookiee planet possibly matter? These people live in live in trees and use stupid looking, these really dumb looking airships that are like, they look like dragonflies. They're like helicopters, but they have like dragonfly wings. It's like, this is the planet that's like the top priority for you to defend. This is the planet Yoda has decided he needs to personally oversee the defense of. It's really, it's just wild that they decided the Wookiees are their top priority. They live in fucking tree houses. Still on about his prophecy, cause yeah. So then they bring up the prophecy again. That Anakin's supposed to be like the chosen one, and this prophecy. And I wish that they would just give any context as to what this prophecy is. why they all regard it so highly, why they came to the conclusion that Anakin is the chosen one. I don't think they ever talk about that. Why they think Anakin is the chosen one. They just decided it one day. Like, who said this prophecy? What specifically does it say? Why do they even think that this prophecy is going to come? Before these movies began, before Darth Maul showed up in the first one, the Sith had been wiped out for like 1,000 years, they said. So after the Sith, was the Sith being wiped out 1,000 years ago not the fulfillment of this prophecy that said that they'd all get, that the Sith would be wiped out? It says they'll bring balance to the Force, and obviously, I guess bringing balance to the Force means that Anakin will kill all the Jedi and bring the Jedi and the Sith down to like the same level, but of there being like none of either of them left. Although later he also, in his life, he kills the Emperor. That's the thing. It's like the Jedi think that bring balance to the Force means wipe out all the Sith, wipe out the dark side, which is ultimately what he does, I guess. So I guess that the Jedi were right that bringing balance to the Force means killing all the dark side Sith, because he throws the Emperor down a big hole and then dies, so there are no Sith left. But I feel like this movie also, I don't know, this whole prophecy thing is so stupid and so unnecessary. There is no reason to try to bring a prophesized chosen one into this, other than the same thing. Well, other than being poor writing, I think the prophesized chosen ones are kind of always lazy writing. There are good stories that can come out of it, but I still think even in a good story, it's kind of lazy writing. You know, they're not necessarily bad. It's lazy of me to just order a pizza, but I still enjoy eating pizza. So, but the only other reason I can think of why they decided to include it in these prequels is that, like I've been saying, they decided that everything in the episodes 4, 5, and 6 has to be the most important thing ever in these prequels. So Anakin can't just be like a guy, he needs to be the prophesized chosen one that they've been waiting for 1,000 years or whatever. It's just stupid. Um yeah, there's another scene with Anakin and Padme talking. I think they're like talking on a couch, and it is again just like the scenes in episode 2. It's weird, it's awkward. It just starts and they're just sitting there on a couch together, just like staring at each other, again like they're just waiting for the director to say action so they can start talking. We have no context how they got here or why they're suddenly talking about these things. It's just strange, boring nonsense. And it ends off with a very funny scene, which is where, not scene, line of dialogue where Padme says to Anakin, like, she says, like, hold me like you did in Naboo, back when there was no plotting, no politics, no war. And it's like, back on Naboo, there was absolutely all of those things happening. You were a senator, so to say there was no politics. But back on Naboo, she's referencing episode 2. It's like, you were back on Naboo because assassins were trying to murder you. There was absolutely plotting and politics and growing war. They were trying to kill you because you were trying to, well, they were trying to kill her for nonsensical reasons, but there was absolutely a war. They were building, and they wanted to build a republic army. The Confederacy was growing. So it's just like, that line is just incorrect. She doesn't remember the details of her own life. And then the scene just kind of, again, they just run out of dialogue and the scene ends. So then, there's a scene, it's a very funny scene, it's a very famous scene, I think it's a very famous scene, where Anakin and Palpatine talk about stuff. It's the scene where he's like tells Anakin about the what is it, the tragedy of Darth Plagueis or something. I feel like I've seen that line referenced a lot. But and they're at like a weird, I don't know what, it's like an opera or something. I have no idea what's going on, like what they're watching. It's like these big floating bubbles of water, and it might be more like a ballet than an opera. There might be people like dancing in the water. It's strange. I don't know what this thing they're watching is supposed to be, but it has like an opera feel to it. They're in like big booths and watching. It makes me wonder if Palpatine does stuff like that after becoming the Emperor. Like, can you imagine how he is in 6, the Emperor on his throne with this thing? Is he still like going to the opera and stuff like that, or is he just sitting around cackling as an evil space wizard? So Anakin comes in and they start talking, and Palpatine tells there's like other people in the booth with him, and he's like, "Leave us," and they leave, and it's like, well, weren't they watching the opera, ballet, water bubble thing? Kind of like, I get you want some privacy, but you're kind of watching a show. These people also came here to see it. Kind of rude to make them leave rather than you go in the hallway and have your evil conversation. You know what it reminds me of? The thing they're watching is Futurama. It made me think of this. There's an episode of Futurama where Fry's learning to play this instrument, and it's like a flute, and it makes these if you play it right, it makes like holograms appear, and you watch. I don't know why, there was something about this bubble thing that made me think of that episode. Fry gets his hands chopped off and replaced with the robot devils. That's a good episode. That episode is better and more emotional than this entire movie. I should watch that instead. So I'm not the first one to point this out, so I don't want to talk about it much. But like, I'm not the first person to probably point most of this out, but I already know other people have analyzed this scene a lot better. But everything the Emperor says to Anakin should be setting off so many red flags. Where he's just talking about the Sith and how he knows all this stuff about the Sith and all this. But then he says there was a guy. I don't know if we're supposed to take as an implication here that this Plagueis guy was Sidious's master. I don't know if that's supposed to be the implication or not, or if it really is just a story that he heard once. Because he's like, eventually Sidious was killed by his apprentice, and it's like, yeah, I was never sure. I'm not sure if he's saying he killed Plagueis or not. I guess it doesn't change anything. It doesn't matter. But he's like, he even had the power to stop people from dying, and it's like, well, what does that mean? Like, Anakin has no follow-up questions to that concept. Like, what does it mean he could stop people from dying? Like, he could just induce immortality in other people? Could he cure their wounds? Could he, like, what does it... we have no idea what it means because it doesn't expand on it. And I'm also not entirely certain, even by the end of the movie, whether or not it's supposed to be true. There's a couple things like that pop up in these movies where people, mostly Palpatine, says stuff, and at the end of the movie, I don't know if that was supposed to be a lie. And this is one of those things. I don't know if he is just making shit up, or if he really does knew a guy who could induce immortality in other people. If that's even what that's supposed to mean, that he could stop people from dying. That's such a vague concept to throw out there, and Anakin just has no follow-up questions other than whether, yeah. So then they're like, okay, we know where Grievous is, the Jedi Council, and for some reason they decide just to send Obi-Wan to try to kill him. Just like in the previous movie. Yeah, actually, this happens in every movie. It's like, hey, guy. Wait, they're like, oh, we're pretty sure that back in the first one, that Sith that attacked you is on Naboo. You two go deal with that. We have like an army of hundreds of Jedi, and our main thing is killing Sith, and we're pretty sure one's going to be on Naboo, but just you two go deal with that. And then the second one, they do end up sending hundreds of Jedi towards the end to go die in the arena in that horrible plan. Jedi are terrible at planning. Yeah, the Jedi are idiots in general. But in the second one, they still just like are sending Obi-Wan out to do stuff rather than. But in this one, it's the same thing. We're pretty sure Grievous is on this planet. He might not be, but we're pretty sure he is. And for some reason, we know that killing him will instantly end the war for some reason. But let's just send Obi-Wan. Let's not send any of these other Jedi. Let's not send Anakin. Like, we have Anakin and Obi-Wan constantly doing stuff together anyway. They went off to rescue Palpatine together. They're constantly doing stuff together. Nah, let's just send Obi-Wan. Because Grievous might not be there. But, like, even if they just send one guy, it's like, their excuse is that he might not be there and might not be Grievous, so why inconvenience more than one guy? But it's like, what if he is there? The plan really is just for Obi-Wan to kill him? They even talk about how many times in the past they've tried to kill him and nothing's ever worked. And it's like, well, maybe this is why it never works. Maybe this is why he's constantly escaping. It's because you send one guy to deal with him. The Jedi are idiots. And by the Jedi are idiots, I mean George Lucas is kind of an idiot. Do you have anything else? Oh, this is another thing that they seem to have forgotten. They seem to have forgotten this since episode 5. Episode 5 has... Actually, the original Star Wars trilogy really only has one big ground battle. All the other battles are either kind of smaller fighting or in space, or they're like on the Death Star. It only has one big ground battle, and that's Hoth. And the Battle of Hoth is awesome. And they got the big machines walking around, they got the trenches and these tour. It's a really cool battle. They seem to have forgotten about the Battle of Hoth when writing these movies. And that's because the concept of Hoth, the reason that they had a big ground battle is it's like they have this shield generator and it's protecting the planet from orbital bombardment. So we need to send our giant robot AT-ATs to blow that thing up so we can just blow the base up from space. They seem to have completely forgotten about that because the concept of just bombing enemy bases from space is never brought up in these movies. I got thinking about that while they're fighting the droid armies, like coming out of the ocean on Kashyyyk, which is the name of the Wookiee planet, and fighting the Wookiees. And I remembered, oh wait, why aren't they just bombing the shit out of the Wookiees from space? Which one of these two armies' forces is in control of the space around this planet? Like, is there also a giant space battle happening while they're invading the ground? And just realize, oh, yeah, no, it's just because they want these big, like, pointless ground battles. And they completely forgot the logic of just bombing the shit out of people. Why, okay, so I just wanted to bring that up. I like the ring transporter thing. Okay, yeah, there's two other notes. So one thing I wanted to mention that I like, because I do try to mention things that I like. There's a neat concept in this one. It's possible this is in the second one, I just missed it, but I don't think so. I think it's just this one. Where Obi-Wan's got his little fighter plane thing. And he hooks it onto this, like, ring. It's like this big metal ring floating in space. And... like, it's covered in, I guess, sort of like warp drives, like light speed capable things. And he hooks onto that, and that ring, like, carries him to his destination, and then he unhooks his ship to go down to the planet. And I really like that. I think that's a neat concept. I think that's cool, and I think that it's a little bit of sort of I don't know, almost like logic to their world building. Like, not every ship, especially this tiny little craft, might necessarily have warp drive capability. It's a little contradictory because we have seen previously that every ship does seem to basically have the ability to do that, to go light speed. But I'm okay with it. Like I said, I just think I think it's a neat idea. Even if it doesn't necessarily fit in with what they've done previously on its own, I like it. But this is also when I noticed that this movie has a pretty similar structure at this point to the second one, where like Anakin goes off and he's doing like boring shits with just talking to various people, like the big chunk in the second one where he goes to Naboo, and it's just like Anakin's over here on one planet and he's just kind of talking to people and building on relationships that way, and then Obi-Wan goes off on like an adventure. In the second one he goes to Kamino and then Geonosis, and he's like doing that things and having fight scenes and stuff. And then in this one he goes to this planet Utapau to kill Grievous. It's not like the biggest similarity. It's not like a one-for-one through the whole movie connection. But at this point, when he goes to that Utapau planet, that I got thinking, oh yeah, this is kind of like, this feels a little bit like what happened in the second one. So then he gets to Utapau, and the planet's like, he's there to kill Grievous. He's an assassin. Jedi are assassins now, and on top of everything else that they are. But it's like, the planet he's on is occupied by the droid army. And it's like, if they're occupied and under the control of Grievous, why did the droids allow Obi-Wan to land on the planet in the first place? It should have been he approaches the planet and he's like, hey, I'm gonna land. Can I land on the planet? You got this landing pad down there. Can I use that? And someone should have responded, no, fuck off. We don't want you here. Go away. You know, if they're trying to stay hidden on this planet. But here's the thing about that, is it's like, why are they hiding on this planet in the first place? Why are all of these people meeting, and why are the droid army all hanging out on a planet that is apparently hostile to them, that apparently isn't a member of the Confederacy? And this is where it gets really confusing, because when you start thinking about the way that this whole Utapau situation plays out, it kind of feels like maybe the droid army isn't supposed to be this like massive force that's like has all these planets and everything. If they're like hiding out on Utapau, they feel almost like a rebel faction. Like they've already, like they're losing, and they're operating more like how smaller forces that are like, yeah, it's just, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they're like hiding and running around and like taking planets that don't want them as like hostages, rather than just hanging out in territory that they securely control. And it kind of makes it feel like maybe the Confederacy doesn't control territory. Maybe they are just like essentially a small kind of defeated rebel faction. But I don't. But other times in the movie, it doesn't feel like that's what it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be a giant military force, rivaling that of the Republic. But it just makes this scene not makes work. The way that they're operating is inconsistent in terms of what their relative power and strength is supposed to be. And part of that is just the whole nonsense of we have to hide our leaders, rather than our leaders should be on whatever planet we're using as our capital, running this country, running this government. Again, it's just I already talked about it. I'm not going to go over it again. And then Obi-Wan gets a lizard, and this lizard looks like something out of a like a knockoff James Cameron Avatar movie. The lizard thing that he rides around on Utapau. I swear to God, I thought he was about to whip out a ponytail and hook up to it. Um, and actually later you can see what I guess are supposed to be like the Utapau soldiers, like rebelling against the Confederacy forces, and they're also riding like big. They're riding the big birds from uh, Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar. Which one came out first? I don't know which one came out first. I think this movie came out. Yeah, no, right? Attack of the Clones came out well before James Cameron's Avatar. So James Cameron's nicking ideas from fucking Star Wars, in addition to nicking ideas from everywhere else. Maybe I'll do Avatar next. That movie has no creativity outside of its visuals, and apparently the visuals were taken from Attack of the Clones. Um, I don't like James Cameron's Avatar at all. Maybe I will do a video on that one day. um, uh, what? Oh yeah, yeah. So then Obi-Wan famously jumps down to fight um, Grievous and says hello there, and rather than having 50 million, all of his 50 million battle droids just shoot the shit out of Obi-Wan like he should have done, he agrees to fight him. Actually, he agrees to fight him after having his bodyguard robots, the stupid bodyguard robots with the staves, try to attack Obi-Wan. And this is such a small detail, but I want to point it out. Earlier in the movie, when they're on the command ship, uh, Obi-Wan chops one of those robots' heads off, and it keeps going just fine. Like, apparently their head serves no purpose, they can function without it. But then here, he chops one of their heads off, and it dies. So I just wanted to point that teeny tiny inconsistency out. Unless the thing that actually makes them, unless like you can chop their heads off and they have a backup brain that's for some reason located in their legs, because the only difference between this one and that one is this one's legs are also crushed. So, um, Obi-Wan also does this thing. He does it twice in this scene where he strikes like a fighting pose, and he goes. The fighting pose is him. He puts his lightsaber back like this, lightsaber like this, and then he puts his hands out like this. It is like a peace sign point. It's the dumbest looking thing. And he does it twice. um, and then yeah, and then Grievous whips out 4 lightsabers. He's like, I was trained by Count Dooku to fight with a lightsaber. For some reason, Count Dooku did that. And at some point, I don't know when he would do that or why he would have the inclination to do that. Oh wait, I do know it, so they can have another fucking fight scene with lightsabers everywhere that just goes on forever. Yeah, and just like I complained about in episode 2, how suddenly Geonosis is just being invaded by millions of clone troopers, and the Geonosians didn't notice. Suddenly, the whole planet is being invaded by all of Utapau is being invaded by millions of stormtroopers, and nobody noticed until they're just sort of there now. Droids really need to pay the fuck attention to what is happening around them. For being robots, they are shockingly unaware of the world around them. Oh, during this fight, there's also these spider robots. I noticed there's like these brown spider robots crawling around, and they're kind of cool looking. I like the way they look, but they're just kind of odd. They're just there. They never show up anywhere before or after. Yeah, I don't know if they are supposed to have like guns attached to them, but there's just like these big spider robots all over the place now. I like them. They look kind of neat. I just like robots, I guess. Um, feet. Oh, yeah, it's the Force. Oh yeah, so then Obi-Wan's fighting Grievous, and just like so many other scenes, he just remembers all of a sudden that he has the Force. This incredible. He remembers he's a space wizard, and just uses his space magic to just push Grievous away and win the fight. And it's like, yeah, he should do that. Not that so often that is what ends a lot of these lightsaber fights throughout these three movies is characters just remembering that they have magical powers and using those to instantly win. um, uh, then Grievous gets into a stupid looking. Actually, it's kind of neat looking. It's like this big, round, like giant wheel with guns on it. There's in the Twisted Metal games. I think that there's one of the vehicles in Twisted Metal looks exactly like that, except there's a dude inside of it. Um, but for some reason, it also has legs so that it can jump, and that completely it went from kind of neat to completely silly and ridiculous because they just have no restraint when it comes to designing these things, and decided it also needs to have legs so it can run and jump. uh Jedi is about the movies, yeah. Then yeah, the Jedi are hanging out. After that, there's a scene that lasts like 30 seconds of them hanging out at like another war council, talking about how worried they are. That's all the Jedi Council does in any of these movies is sit around talking about how worried they are about stuff that's happening, but they're doing fuck all about. Um, so then Anakin Anakin and Palpatine have like a really pivotal scene in the movie where they talk, and it's the scene where Palpatine reveals the incredibly obvious information that he is an evil space wizard, that he's the Sith Lord that they're looking for. Um, and it's also the scene where Palpatine unambiguously explains that he knows that Anakin is having these dreams where Padme dies in childbirth. And this is another one of those things about Palpatine and his powers that's just like I don't get and they don't explain. Where it's like, does Palpatine know that Anakin is having dreams about Padme dying because Palpatine is inducing those dreams into Anakin to get him to go nuts? Or does he just know that Anakin is having them? I guess he's not inducing the dream. Well, yeah, I guess the dreams are genuine because Padme does die later while giving birth. So, but still, is Palpatine inducing them, or did he just know about that this is going to happen? And if it's the second one, then I guess Palpatine just lucked out real hard that the guy that he wants to become his apprentice just happens to also be having like prophetic visions of his wife dying. I guess that's a lot of these movies can be described as Palpatine lucking out real hard. Palpatine either lucking out real hard or having such incredible powers to manipulate things to go the way he wants that he's basically a living god and cannot be defeated. Until episode 6, where he is easily defeated by not seeing really obvious things that were about to happen. So yeah. Oh, and then there's this weird scene. Not this weird scene, but like a funny element about the scene is it ends. Anakin says, "I'm going to turn you over to the Jedi Council, and they'll kind of pass their judgment on you." And that's the last thing Anakin says before the scene ends. But then we just learn in the next scene that he doesn't do that. Like, him saying, "I'm going to turn you over to the Jedi Council," is almost like, you're still under arrest. I'm taking you as my prisoner to the Jedi, and they will decide what to do with you. That's how the scene ends, like, with him basically saying that's what he's going to do. And then in the next scene, we find out he just didn't do that. I guess after saying that he was going to turn him over to the Jedi Council, he just left? Unless he meant turn him over to the Jedi Council as in, like, tattle on him. I guess that must be what he means. But that's not what you would think he's saying he's gonna do. It sounds like he's saying, "You are my prisoner. You are under arrest, and I'm going to take you to the Jedi Council." But I guess that's not what he meant. He just meant, "I'm gonna go tell on you." um. So then I guess Grievous dies, and Obi-Wan just kills him. They have this long fight scene where they're fighting with lightsabers, and then he chases them all throughout the city, and then he shoots Grievous in the chest, and he dies. And it's like, yep, that's just over. That whole point. And Grievous dies the way he lives, not really doing anything, not really mattering, just being a third boss fight character. Yeah, and Obi-Wan kills him by shooting him in the chest, and it just raises a question I've had since I was a little kid, which is, I get that the lightsaber is a pretty good weapon, but why don't the Jedi also carry guns? They're clearly very useful. He even is like super dismissive of the gun after he kills Grievous with it, and it's like, dude, why don't you carry one of those around with you all the time? You're fighting especially now that you're a general fighting a war. Apparently he's a general. They refer to him as general a couple times. Just carry a fucking gun, dude. They're super useful, as you can see. So then it's like, they get word that Grievous is dead. And again, it's like little kid logic. It's like, Grievous is dead, so I guess the war is over. Because immediately upon learning this information, Mace Windu is like, okay, then let's go confront the Emperor right now and tell him that he has to relinquish his emergency power or he's under arrest. And it's like, okay, do you really have the authority to do that? Like, do you, as the Jedi, have the authority to say, hey, this guy is dead, so we've arbitrarily decided that now you have to relinquish your emergency power? And then he learns that he's a Sith Lord, and he's like, oh, well, then we'll go arrest him for that. And it's like, again, do the Jedi have the authority to just arrest people for knowing about the dark side? Is that an arrestable offense? I guess it could be in this universe. We've already established that the Jedi are a part of this government. So it almost feels like it makes sense that they could just outlaw the concept of the dark side and arrest people just for knowing things about it. So then Mace Windu goes to arrest Palpatine. Him and like 3 other nameless Jedi. And it's really weird, because I guess this scene is taking place in his office, but you look at his office and it's like he's just surrounded by computer monitors. That's a thing in this movie. They'll just slap like computer looking technology shit onto everything, every surface. So his office seems to be, his desk is just like this like computer command center that just surrounds him on all sides. It looks like, it doesn't look like someone's office. It looks like where he would be sitting to like, if you almost like a security command point, like just covered in screens. It almost feels like that's where the guy who's in charge of security would be sitting, and there'd be cameras all around him and controls to unlock doors and move cameras around. It doesn't look like an office. Anyway, so they go to arrest him. Mace Windu brings 3 of the worst Jedi warriors in the entire galaxy with him to do this, because they just all die immediately once the fight breaks out. He doesn't bring any non-Jedi either. He doesn't like bring like this security of any kind. It's just these 4 Jedi. He doesn't bring the police or anything like that. This is so stupid. Now Palpatine also just has a lightsaber. Palpatine with a lightsaber is like Yoda with a lightsaber. It's just stupid and should not have happened, and misunderstands the, like, in episode 6 he doesn't use a lightsaber, and it makes him so much more powerful seeming that he doesn't care about these like petty fighting of Vader and Luke. In fact, the Emperor even describes the lightsaber in episode 6 as a Jedi weapon. Like, he doesn't use one. because he's a super powerful space wizard that can shoot lightning from his fucking hands. He doesn't need to use a lightsaber. But in this, just so they can have more fight scenes with lightsabers everywhere, now he's just got one too, and he's apparently amazing with it. Or those three suck. Actually, you watch the fight, it's clear those three just don't know what they're doing. It's not that Palpatine is some great warrior. Those three don't seem to know what's going on. It's just so dumb. Now he's just got a lightsaber too, and he's jumping around too. Like they're in this tiny office space, and even there, they have to have him doing like tiny little flips, and they just look so stupid. And then, like, yeah, there's this funny shot where it cuts to Anakin, and he's like heading towards the office where this fight scene is happening, and he's just like power walking, and it just looks silly in the middle of this action scene. Then the Emperor says no, 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 but I cannot even approximate the way that he says it. It's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a little kid's voice or something. It's the way he says no when he's like laying on the ground in front of Windu. It's just so strange, and I have no idea what they were going for. If it's supposed to sound crazy or scary, or I cannot even begin to replicate it. But then he starts shooting lightning at Mace Windu, and Mace Windu is able to reflect the lightning back at him, and they treat it. I have no idea why he continues to shoot the lightning at Mace Windu if Mace Windu can reflect it with his lightsaber. He just sits there for a while. He starts talking. He's like even having a conversation with Anakin as he's just sitting there blasting himself in the face with lightning. And it's like, why is he shooting more lightning? Stop shooting lightning. It's not working. It's just coming straight back at him. It's super funny. So then Mace Windu decides he's gonna like execute Palpatine, and it feels super out of character for Mace Windu, like, to just decide he's just gonna stone cold behead this guy. And it's like, isn't that kind of what Anakin did at the start of the movie, where he beheaded Count Dooku, and that was treated as a really big deal, as like a sign of his fall to the dark side? And Mace Windu just is gonna do the same thing? It was Mace Windu secretly also falling to the dark side these whole movies? Are we gonna get another prequel trilogy to show Mace Windu being slowly corrupted to the dark side, and it culminates in him trying to kill Palpatine? It doesn't make sense within the movie's own internal logic, and it just feels really out of place. Like, out of... Mace Windu has basically no character. Mace Windu is not a real character. He's not fleshed out in any way or interesting. He's just a boring asshole like everyone else. And even still, this feels out of character for what little we know of him. For him to just be like, yeah, I'm just going to kill this guy. It's there just so that Anakin has to kill Mace Windu. It's the only reason that plays out that way. He chops his hands off. Yeah, actually, he didn't even have to really kill Mace Windu. For some reason, rather than just using his lightsaber to block Mace Windu's lightsaber and be like, no, stop, he immediately chops off both of Mace Windu's hands. So, yeah, then he kills... Mace Windu dies, and I guess Anakin swears his allegiance to Palpatine, because I guess he's like, well, I guess I'm locked in now, I guess. And Palpatine is like, hey, we can work together to discover the secret of how to stop people from dying. And Anakin isn't like, wait, what? Like, do we have time to figure that out? Because that sounds really specific and difficult. And Padme's death is kind of, imminent. She's super pregnant, and she's gonna die when she gives birth, so this whole vague, we can figure out how to do this, doesn't seem to really help me. And even if it is like, okay, this is the path I'm going on, and I need to figure this shit out, it's my only hope, then you'd still think he'd be like, yeah, no, all this other stuff you want me to do, killing the Separatists, killing the Jedi, all that can wait. Top priority is figuring this shit out. Once my wife's not going to die, because that's my motivation for all of this, then we can do this other shit. But I'm not helping you until we figure that shit out. But no, he doesn't say that. He just goes right along with this whole, I guess I'm going to kill all the Jedi, and then I guess I'm going to kill all the Confederates. Yeah, because he's immediately on board with this shit. Like, once he decides, I guess I'm gonna help Palpatine, he just his character completely changes in halfway through this scene in Palpatine's office. Anakin just kind of completely switches direction. Yeah, and he's just completely on board with all this shit immediately. So then, yeah, okay, so then Palpatine orders Order 66, and all the clones just know what that means, and they start killing all the Jedi. So it's like, and not only do they know like that Order 66 means to start killing all the Jedi, the clone troopers also start referring to Palpatine as my lord. So all the clone troopers have just been on board with the idea that Palpatine is like their ruling emperor from the beginning. That was programmed into their brain. Are the Camino Sith? Because that means that the Camino did that. The Camino... That's never brought up. The Camino are the ones who must have programmed told the clones about this. They're like, must have trained them to be like, hey, one day you're going to get an order to kill all the Jedi, so do that. Oh, and also the Palpatine guy, he's your master. So the Camino are just evil as well. See, this is what I mean. I talked about in the second one. The Camino should be the most important race in the galaxy, but this whole concept is also just never brought up. Apparently the Camino are all just evil. I guess. Because they were cool with this. And I guess that means they were just, like, full of shit in the second one when they said that, like, we're doing this because Master Sifo Dyas, this Jedi, asked us to. That must have been a lie. Because why would they program the droid, train the clones to kill all the Jedi one day then? And to think of the Palpatine, who at that time would have just been a senator, to think of him as their master, as their lord. Unless the Camino were just in on it the whole time. It's the only way that makes sense. And it's dumb. So then they also just kill all the Jedi. So this is a thing I got thinking about, and I guess I answered it myself during all this talking, is I was thinking the Jedi were like generals and like generally running this war, as well as being like super soldiers at the Republic's for the Republic. And now they're all just dead. They're all suddenly killed very easily. Suddenly Jedi are very easy to kill when it comes time to kill them all. They suddenly can't detect that they're being betrayed or fight a room full of clones. They're all easily slaughtered by these soldiers that they should have no problem defeating. Even if they are being caught by surprise. Because sometimes when the movie doesn't want them to be, Jedi can't be caught by surprise. But then when the movie wants all the Jedi to die, suddenly no, none of their extra supernatural powers help them. But it's like, shouldn't this severely hurt their ability to fight the droid armies? Shouldn't they be kind of screwed? All their commanders and all the people conducting this whole war and all their super soldiers are just suddenly gone overnight. But again, I guess as far as the movie's concerned, the war's over as soon as all the separatist leaders are dead. So I guess that doesn't matter. Um, yeah, and it's a good thing that all these Jedi, when they are being killed in scenarios where I guess nobody else is around to witness it. It's always just Jedi and their clone troopers. There's no Jedi that aren't at that moment, because it just happens one day. It's not like a big complicated scheme to like bring all the Jedi together so they can be all wiped out at once. They just one day get the order, and coincidentally all the Jedi are in positions where there's no one else around to witness it. They're all just like right there. None of them are out on their own somewhere. No, they're all just seem to be perfectly in the position to be slaughtered all at once. Um, with like no warning or heads up to the clones that this is going to happen. They just all happen to be in a spot where they can be easily defeated. um, and I think that this is like where the movie starts getting really dark and really violent. This is the part of the movie where Anakin apparently just slaughters a room full of children, and it's like, why did they feel that the movie had to be this way? Why did they feel that it had to get that fucked up? Um, like this is the guy that we're supposed to, by the end of episode 6, think is kind of like a sort of misunderstood heroic guy who kills the Emperor to save his son, and his death is a tragedy, I guess. But he kills like a room full of kids, we now know, and did all this other fucked up stuff. And it's like, I don't know. I just don't think that the movie had to get that fucking dark. I think that tonally, like, do you remember back in episode 1, like all the cartoony shit? Actually, even at the start of this movie, there's a bunch of cartoony shit. R2-D2 gets into a wacky situation with some super battle droids early on. And by the end of it, yeah, just all these people being massacred. And it's like, I don't know. Then there's this one little bit that I found kind of confusing. I don't know if we're supposed to take it that the clone troopers, after the battle with the droids, which like various other battles in these movies, I guess the clones won. Just like the space battle at the start of the movie, I don't know. Just like Geonosis in episode 2, I don't know. I guess the clones won while we weren't looking. The battle's just over now, I think, and I guess the clones won. And then they do it here on Kashyyyk. It's like, I think the battle is over. I think the clones won. But the whole scene is so actually irrelevant. The whole concept of this battle is so irrelevant to the war, to the story, that it doesn't matter. We don't have to know who won. The movie just carries on. But I don't know if it's implied that the clones are killing all the Wookiees too. I don't know. It seems to be kind of implied, but I'm not sure if that's... Or I inferred it, but I'm not sure. They come across some dead Wookiees, and they're like, these ones are dead. Keep looking. So it's like, are they killing their allies? I don't get it. Then Obi-Wan leaves Utapau, and I just kind of noticed, speaking of Battlefront 2 earlier, that the plane, the ship that he gets in to leave Utapau, I think, was the Separatist bomber plane in in Battlefront 2. It's like this kind of silver, and I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, I think that's their bomber ship in that game, and I don't know why they decided to go with that ship, because it has nothing to do with the Confederacy. They have tons of ships in the space battles, so I don't know why they chose this one to be their bombers in that game. But then everyone's like, oh my god, the Jedi tried to take over, it's this whole thing. And it's obviously ridiculous that anyone would believe that the Jedi tried to take over. Like Palpatine is so clearly evil. He's been like absorbing all these powers, and like I say, there's no witnesses to the Jedi trying to take over. Everyone just takes Palpatine's word for it. There's no evidence for it. Palpatine just says that that's a thing that happened, and everyone's like, yeah, well, that sounds like something they do. But I have no idea why anyone would think that's something they do, or why anyone would trust Palpatine at this point. The whole concept would kind of work if this throughout this trilogy there was more of a concept of there being a power struggle between the two. Like maybe if the Jedi actually had at various points also tried to expand their own power and become more powerful themselves. You know what I mean? Like like um like the whole idea of the Jedi being generals. Maybe if that was kind of controversial. Or like if at some point we saw Palpatine wanted to control the military and the Jedi were like, no. And there actually was kind of a power struggle between the two. Then it might kind of work when Palpatine's like they tried to take over. You'd have a reason to think, like people would have a reason to think that maybe that's something that the Jedi would do. But it's entirely just one way. It's just Palpatine trying to take all the power in the galaxy. So him accusing the Jedi and everyone going along with it makes no sense. It's like, oh, what a coincidence. While no one was looking, the soldiers, these soldiers, not these soldiers, the Jedi tried to take over, and I had them all killed, and now I'm in charge. I even sent a bunch of troops to burn their temple to the ground. Because they tried to take over. There are no prisoners left. You can't talk about it. We had them all killed. Yeah, and the Jedi just the whole thing are just pawns. Yeah, so then Anakin goes to kill the Separatist leaders, because even though all the Separatist leaders are doing is hiding on Mustafar, they're still important, apparently, and somehow leading the Confederacy. Important. And this is kind of, you know what's weird? It was only here at this scene where, like, Newt Gunray gets killed that I realized that he actually apparently is technically a super important character to the story. I don't think I realized when I was a kid that that's like the same goofy looking alien that's like in all three movies and apparently is one of the most important people in Star Wars. But you never think of him. In a way, he's kind of the antagonist. Well, the Emperor. In a way, he is kind of the most consistent antagonist throughout these movies. And then here at the very end, they make him kind of more sympathetic as he's like begging for his life. Yeah. Then I guess Yoda and Obi-Wan go back to I think they go to the Jedi Temple and start killing a bunch of clone troopers. And it's like, again, all of the other Jedi, the non-important ones, are all easily defeated by these same clone troopers, by these same forces, but then they are easily defeated by Yoda and Obi-Wan because they're important. But there's a part where Yoda throws a lightsaber and it like sticks into a clone and then he jumps over and pulls it out. And this is just a little thing, but it's like, why would the lightsaber stick into him and stick there like it's a knife or a sword? It's like a laser energy weapon. Shouldn't it just continue to like sail through his whole body? Or if it does go in, shouldn't it then just like start cutting, like fall and just slice his body in half? Why would it stick into him like that? Unless Yoda threw it so hard that even the metal lightsaber handle stabbed through the guy's body, then it would stick in him like that. But that's kind of funny to think about, actually. Yeah, okay, so then, this is something I gotta think about. The whole thing of the Emperor now launching his plan to be like, I'm in charge, we're gonna form a new empire and everything. Why would that possibly happen now? Isn't this like one of the worst times to do it? Because him being like, I'm basically just in charge now, I have all the power. Why would that follow logically immediately from the Jedi attempting some kind of coup? How does the Jedi attempted some kind of coup and now they're all dead, so now I'm going to be the Emperor and this is an empire, follow logically from each other? It doesn't make any sense. And actually the whole concept here was that there's a big emergency from the war, and so the Senate keeps giving more and more power to the Emperor. Like that's like the plot basically of what's happening here. There's a big crazy war against robots, so we need a strong central leader. Keep giving me more power, and now I'm in charge of everything. But when he does finally make his big move to be like, we're an empire now, and I'm the emperor for life, he does that at the end of the war. Like, the worst time to be doing that. He's like, the same day that the war is over, I'm declaring that I'm in charge forever. And that doesn't make any sense. It's just like, the emperor's in charge, everything's just a straight line in terms of how this galaxy works, and then one day all this crazy shit happens and he's like, I'm in charge now, and everyone's just cool with that. So also I don't get why the Jedi don't just go to the Senate and try to explain what's happening. They do all this shit in secret while no one's watching, all this stuff but they have like a room full of slaughtered children that were killed by the stormtroopers, by the clone troopers, and be like, look, they like slaughtered all these people, including these little kids. We're clearly not the bad guys here. And they have security footage of it happening. And they have, for some reason, security footage of the Emperor has security cameras in his office. And the whole thing that happened with Mace Windu and Anakin and Palpatine was apparently all caught on security camera footage. Why are they not, like, just going and explaining this to people? Go to, like, the news or the Senate or whatever. But no. They're still just going around where no one's watching and trying to kill people in private rooms. They handled this the worst way that it could possibly be handled. So then Obi-Wan tries finding Anakin. They continue to refer to children as younglings, which makes me laugh every time because it sounds so dumb. Then Obi-Wan tells Padme that Anakin killed a bunch of younglings. And she's like shaken by it, bothered by it, and she's like, she says that she doesn't believe him. But it's like, hey, Padme, here's the thing. Do you remember in episode 2 when Anakin killed a bunch of unarmed women and children in the Tusken village? And you told him that it's okay? Do you remember that? Do you remember when he slaughtered a bunch of children and you said to be angry is to be human, and then made out with him? Maybe you're... at least a little, maybe you should start questioning just a little bit what role you played in this whole Anakin going berserk and killing everyone thing. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing that out there. Because the last time he killed a bunch of kids, like the next day, you started making out with him and then agreed to marry him. So, yeah, Padme. So at this point they kind of try to justify the war is over because the separatist leaders are dead, but it's like with a single line where Palpatine just tells Anakin to send out a message to the separatist fleet saying that all the droids have to be shut down, and it's like, that's their attempt to kind of give some kind of logic to it, but that's just so dumb. Like, everyone in the Confederacy is going to get that message and just be like, yeah, okay, I guess we'll just shut off our millions of robots and just power down our fleets and end the war, because not even our leaders, we just got a message from a planet where our leaders are supposedly hanging out telling us to do it. It's like, you want the war to end? You want the Confederacy to stand down and surrender? You just killed all the people that actually have the authority to make that happen. In truth, the war should be unendable at this point. The Confederacy no longer has anyone to represent them. There's no one left alive to give that order to stand down. Um, they just have to send out a message and hope that the entire Confederacy listens to them and agrees to stop fighting. Um, so then everyone gets to Mustafar, and here's the thing: either Mustafar is right next to because everyone just gets there now. So either Mustafar is right next to Coruscant, or Anakin just hung out on Mustafar after completing his mission for like a super long time because he went there and then he killed all the Confederates, and then after getting there and killing them all, like a little while after, Padme went to Mustafar to meet him, and he's still just there. So either he just was just hanging out, or it doesn't take very long to get to Mustafar. Because otherwise, in the time she was going, he would have left, unless it's super quick. Because stuff's kind of happening. He has places, to be. He's stuff to go do. Um, so this is where so I don't get this part. Anakin seems to now think that doing all this stuff is going to make him more powerful and give him special powers. He seems to be confident at this point that he can save Padme's life. And it's like, why does he think that just going and killing a bunch of little kids and then killing all of these Confederate leaders has somehow given him new powers and abilities? The way he talks in this scene, it feels like he thinks that he's somehow achieved something, and he hasn't. He's no closer to his goal of saving Padme's life. But also, this is where it gets a little confusing, because it feels like he forgot that his whole motivation for doing all these things was saving his life. Like I said, after that scene in Palpatine's office, Anakin just suddenly flips, and he's just totally not just on board with doing all this stuff, but it's like he's forgotten that his only reason for doing it in the first place was to save Padme's life. Because now he's talking about building an empire and all this stuff, and just like the rest of the movie, this is where it occurred to me, just like in the second one, that the whole idea of him just leaving now and being with Padme still doesn't occur to him. It's like now he's just on board with running an evil empire, and it's like that's never really felt like his goals. I guess he's always been even in the second one, he was saying he would be on board with a kind of totalitarian regime, but yeah, it's like his goal is clearly supposed to be Padme, but then that all gets kind of muddled at times when all this other stuff starts coming into it, to the point where here he even just starts choking her when he gets kind of irritated. And it's like, I get he's under a lot of stress, but I don't know. I don't know. It just feels so sudden and unearned. So then there's this funny scene. This scene is very, very funny. Yoda comes in to Palpatine's office, and it's so funny. Palpatine's just sitting there at a desk. Him, and he's got this guy, this blue guy, and these two guards, and they're all just sitting there in this empty office at a desk, not saying or doing anything. And I just get this kind of feeling that Palpatine, after making his big speech that he's the Emperor now, is just well, now what do I do? Because he's just sitting there, just all this crazy stuff happened, and he just seems like he's just trying to figure out what it is that he's supposed to do now. I guess all the Jedi are dead and I'm in charge? Yeah, I don't know. He's just, excited and happy when Yoda shows up because he's got something to do again. Yeah, I don't know. At first I wasn't sure what this office was, but eventually the thing rises up, and I guess this is, he's almost his ready room where just before he goes up to address the Senate. I don't know. And then, see, this is where we learn, I I guess this squid guy that's with him, the blue guy, I guess he's also in on this. He seems to be fine with the fact that Palpatine's a Sith. Just like everyone else in this movie, a bunch of people inexplicably just are cool with Palpatine being their leader as an evil space wizard. And this blue guy seems to be on board with it, but Yoda. There's this kind of, I like this bit where he kind of just like knocks out, Yoda walks in and just like knocks out these 2 guards. I like that. And then like pushes Palpatine over his desk and he does like a pratfall kind of thing. It's very funny. I think that was supposed to be funny, but I liked it a lot. And then Yoda starts doing all of his Yoda-isms. I complained about this one in the second one. Yoda, to such an unnecessary degree, talks in his backward way. And these lines where he's confronting the Emperor are supposed to be serious, but they just insist on having him talk in this Yoda way. At times they're just so inappropriate, and it's like, he doesn't have to talk like that. He doesn't in like episode 5 and 6. He doesn't always talk like that. But in these movies, it's like they forgot that he does talk normal when he has to. And most of the time, if you like watch episode 5, he talks in that backwards way. If you'll notice, most of the time when he's talking in that backwards way, it's when he's like pretending to just be a crazy guy. It's when he's fucking with Luke. After he stops fucking with Luke, he way cuts down on that shit. He still does it a little bit, but not nearly as much. But in these movies, it's like they just decided that that's how he always talks. And yeah, it makes this moment that this confrontation between him and the Emperor is supposed to be serious just silly. Because he refuses to stop. And at one point, during this confrontation, Palpatine says Darth Vader will become more powerful than either of us, than both of us, something like that. And I have no idea why Palpatine thinks that. I don't know why he thinks that Darth Vader is this really important thing, other than, say it with me, again, because it's in the original trilogy. And everything that's in the original trilogy, they decided has to be the most important thing ever here. Darth Vader can't just be the Emperor's apprentice. The Emperor has to be convinced that he's going to be the most powerful being ever. So then Yoda and Palpatine fight. Again, Yoda fighting just looks silly. It even looks sillier here. I didn't notice, maybe this is the case in the second one, but here when he's fighting the Emperor, it's really obvious that Yoda's lightsaber is like a tiny baby lightsaber. It's just so dumb looking. But the Emperor seems to be having a good time. He's like laughing and throwing stuff around. It's like the one bit of joy in the movie is the Emperor just having a blast being an evil space wizard. He's probably my favorite character in the movie. It's such a bad sign that my favorite character in the movie is the big evil Emperor, and that I like the droids more than I like any of the human characters. That's how badly they dropped the ball with having you empathize with any of this. And again, just like with so much of the rest of the movie, there's just such a disconnect between the fight scenes and the dialogue scenes. The dialogue scenes are just people standing around, sitting on couches, not really doing anything. And then a fight scene begins and they become like super beings. There's this one funny shot. After Yoda loses, he's like escapes and he's like crawling through these, I don't know what they are, like ductwork or something. He's crawling through the wall. And he reaches into his pocket and he pulls something out and he pulls it up to his face, and it turns out it's a communicator. But honest to God, for a second, I thought it was an inhaler. I thought Yoda used an inhaler while escaping. I thought he was just gonna go and then just keep crawling. That would have been the funniest. This would have become my favorite Star Wars movie if that had happened, just for no So then, okay, so back on Mustafar, Anakin and Obi-Wan are fighting. There's so many notes I thought about writing about this scene. Actually, throughout a lot of this, the latter half of this movie. But like I said, this movie is just so exhausting that I honestly couldn't even be asked to write a bunch of my notes. Um, when Anakin and Obi-Wan talk here at the end, confront each other, a lot of what they say is just dumb, and I'm not going to get into it, but this facility that they're fighting on here at Mustafar is so poorly planned and thought out because they don't even do it. Just by coincidence, while fighting, lava covers a huge portion of this facility, and it starts melting and falling into the lava river. It's like, did they not know that that was a possibility when they built this place? Did they have to build this lava place directly over the lava so that there was a chance that the place where all of their leaders are hanging out might just get covered in a bolt of lava at any point? Yeah, poorly built. They should have a word with with the architect that designed this place. Um, so then I got thinking while they were fighting, like, after killing the room full of the Separatist leaders, did Anakin just go around this whole place and just kill everyone else? Because we saw that there were other people, and presumably there would be lots of other guards and stuff around. But now we just don't see any of them. They all disappear. So it's like is that what Anakin was doing in the time that Padme was flying over to this planet to meet him? Was he just walking around this facility, just like killing everyone? Because they're all gone. Um, this is probably the silliest fight yet, by the way. This fight goes so over the top and ridiculous. Silliest fight in any of these three movies. This is supposed to be the big culmination of all these movies, and it's just so over the top that it just becomes hilarious. There's a part I was just laughing as this fight was happening. We're like, they're like climbing up a tower and like swinging at each other, and then they get on ropes, and as they swing past each other, they just swing their lightsabers at each other. It just made me think like this fight just going on and on for like ages, and they just start doing more ridiculous stuff as it goes, and like eventually they like go home, like they're on the ship going home, and they're still just swinging at each other. You see them like brushing their teeth next to each other in a bathroom, and they're just swinging at each other. Because you also like, there's no sense that the fight could end at any moment. That like one of them could beat the other one. They just feel like they're pointlessly swinging at each other until we hit a moment in the fight where the writers would allow one of them to win. So until then, they're just swinging glow sticks at each other. It kind of reminded me of the giant chicken fights in Family Guy. If you have, in Family Guy, there's a running joke across a couple of episodes where a giant chicken shows up and attacks Peter, and they just have these ridiculous, over-the-top, prolonged fight scenes. And that's what this reminded me of, the way they're just swinging, and then they're on like a lava river just swinging at each other. That's what it made me think of. Then at one point when they're on the lava river, Anakin hops on the head of a droid in order to get, like, Obi-Wan's on like a platform, but he's on like a droid, a very helpful droid who I guess doesn't mind that Anakin just killed everyone else at this facility. He's happy to just let Anakin use his head as a platform. At which point, again, I would have just used the fucking Force and one of them should have just pushed the other one off into the lava river. But no, neither of them think of that. Anakin says the line, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, which is just such a stupid line. I know other people have talked about how stupid that line is, so I won't. But what's really weird to me, though, is just before saying that kind of famously stupid line, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, Anakin says a line that's just wild. It makes no sense to me why he says it. He says, I should have known that the Jedi were going to take over. And I have no idea why he says that, because the Jedi tried to launch a coup and take over is the lie that the Emperor is telling everyone, but Anakin knows that that's not what happens. Anakin knows that Palpatine is an evil Sith Lord, and knows that they just went there to arrest him because he's evil. And then the Emperor decided to just start murdering all of his enemies. So I have no idea why Anakin would say the line, I should have known the Jedi were going to try to take over. He is one of the only people in the galaxy who knows that that's not what's happening. Whatever. Then Obi-Wan gets on the high ground, and as we all know, once he's on that high ground, game over. Game over, man. He's on a hill. Anakin, can I? It's just like, okay, I know I'm not going to talk about it. Everyone knows that that line is stupid, that whole part is stupid, and that Anakin tries to jump over Obi-Wan's head rather than just getting onto the little hill, stepping off of the friendly droid's head onto the little hill. I don't know. Get cut in half. Actually, and you know what? This is actually another part. Maybe I missed this, and if I did, someone can tell me. Why are Anakin's eyes all fucked up all of a sudden? Anakin's eyes, I just noticed at this point, are all like yellow and weird. He's got those contact lenses in. When did that happen, and why did that happen? Why do his eyes look like that? Is that just what Sith eyes look like? Do your eyes look like that if you're evil? Because no one else's eyes look like that. I mean, the Emperor's eyes also do look like that. But, like, Dooku's eyes didn't look like that. Did Darth Maul's eyes look like that? I don't think so. I don't know. There's no explanation for it. Maybe that is supposed to be what happens when you turn to the dark side. I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just inconsistent. Then Obi-Wan... Anakin's limbs are all chopped off and he's still alive, and then he gets caught on fire and he's still alive, and Obi-Wan should just chop his fucking head off right there. Like, I don't get why Obi-Wan just leaves instead of killing him, other than the movie has to happen. Episode 4 has to happen, so Anakin can't die. Although that would be really funny. That would be so funny if, like, these movies were just set up to like, have all this stuff happen. To like set up episode 4, and then at the last minute they forgot that Anakin is Darth Vader, so he does just die at the end of this movie. They set up everything except Darth Vader. But no, why doesn't he just chop his head off right there? Like, if he just thinks that Anakin is horrible and evil, then he should chop his head off to make sure he's dead. And if it's out of some kind of sentimentality, Anakin is on fire and screaming in pain with no limbs, so he should just chop his head off out of, like, an act of mercy. Either way, it doesn't make any sense for him to just leave. I put a little note here that Padme fell onto the ground earlier after Anakin chokes her. Like, she just passes out, I guess. When they go back to the ship, C-3PO says that he carried her into the ship, and I protest that C-3PO is physically capable of carrying Padme with his weird robot arms. Then they take her to the hospital, and we learn that that Padme is perfectly healthy, but she's dying because she's too sad to continue living. I always thought that was like a joke. Like, I've heard people say that Padme dies of sadness. I didn't know that that was literally what the movie says happens. That she is dying from being too sad. That she's perfectly healthy at dying of sadness. Yeah. Women do that. Women just kind of do that sometimes. You think of sometime set up. Oh yeah, so this is something that surprised me. This isn't something that I think should have happened, but it surprises me that it didn't happen. That at no point in the movie prior to Padme naming Luke and Leia, that they, like, set up why she chose the names Luke and Leia. Like I say, I don't think that they should have. I think it was smart that they didn't, but it surprises me that they didn't have some other characters named Luke and Leia show up at some point, and Padme be like, "Oh, I like those names." It surprised me that they didn't have that. Um, so then we see like Anakin in like the Darth Vader suit, and I just don't buy it. Like, as much as this entire trilogy was set up just to be like, here's the origin story of Darth Vader, I just don't buy that Darth Vader and Anakin are the same person. They have. I get that in the movies he's like 20 years older, so he's more mature and everything, but I just don't feel like Anakin was actually written with Darth Vader in mind in terms of how Darth Vader is as a person, who he is, why he is the way that he is. Darth Vader and Anakin don't feel like the same guy. They don't have any meaningful connection in terms of the way that they operate or personality-wise. They have facts about their life in common, but not anything more meaningful than that. So then the Emperor tells Darth Vader that Padme is dead, and again, I'm not sure if like is the Emperor wrong? Does he think Padme is dead, or is he just lying about that? Although then she does die, so I guess he is kind of right. I don't know. It's unclear. I guess it doesn't matter though. Why send Luke to his family? Yeah, that's something that was just always going to be kind of a huge plot hole. They send Luke to his actual family to keep him hidden. Like, Anakin would never think to look there, look at his for Luke. There's no reason Darth Vader would ever give a shit about Tatooine now that he's Emperor, or I don't know, the apprentice of the Emperor of the Galaxy who owns Tatooine. There's no reason Darth Vader would ever think in a million years about Tatooine or his brother-in-law, brother and sisters-in-law. Family. Luke really got screwed, which that one's definitely true too. We have Luke and Leia, we need to split them up and send them somewhere. Let's send one of them to be a princess on Alderaan, and let's send the other one to be a fucking moisture farmer in the middle of the desert. Luke really got screwed on that 50-50 split. Oh, and they do wipe out C-3PO's mind. I commented on that in the second video. I was like, did they erase his mind? Like, is that the reason? Or is it just a huge plot hole that he doesn't remember these people, even though he lived with them for years? But they do say they wipe his mind. They don't give a reason for why they do it, they just do it, but it still means that Lars should probably remember C-3PO, but whatever. Yeah, so then everyone just kind of gets shoved into their place. Everyone just ends up where they are at start of episode 4. And that is extremely weird now that they're making all of these other Star Wars movies. They probably regret it, saying that at the end of episode 3. I mean, it's different people. It's Disney now, and it was Lucas then. But I'm sure they're like, ah, shit. He ended episode 3 with everyone being exactly where they need to be for episode 4. Because I'm sure otherwise they would be like, oh, let's make movies about the adventures that they have in between. I'm sure they could still do that. But I'm sure they regret that. Being, you know, there's no reason that everyone had to end exactly where they are at the start of episode 4. Yoda is on Dagobah. Obi-Wan says, I guess I'll just live on Tatooine for the next 20 years. Like, everyone just fucks off to be where they have to be. It shows them on the bridge. One of the last things you see is them on the bridge of the Emperor and Darth Vader on the bridge of this Imperial ship looking at the Death Star. And it's like, why do all these guys already have Imperial outfits on? It's not how any of these people dressed just a few minutes ago. And actually, the bridge is designed to look like an Imperial bridge. And it's like, did you really need to do that? Like, overnight after the Emperor took over, they redesigned the bridge of all their ships, and everyone's now wearing these Imperial outfits. And they're looking at the Death Star being built. And again, it's like, does the timeline here really make sense? Like, apparently it takes 20 years from this point for that thing to be built completely. But in episode 6, they like half build it in like a year and a half, right? It's like I don't know. It's just everything being there because remember the original series. Then we get to the last shot of the whole thing. It starts playing the classic original series Star Wars movie music. And admittedly, as much as I just criticized it for being like so dependent on nostalgia for episode 4, I do love that music and it's a nice shot. I like the final shot of the whole movie of them holding baby Luke and standing there and there's the suns. And again, it's just all nostalgia baiting kind of stuff, but it's a nice shot. It's stupid that that's how it all ends because it's like, oh, I guess the movies that I've already seen are going to happen. But you know what? It's also insane that that's how it ends. Like, as a self-contained, like this trilogy cannot be in any way self-contained. Because can you imagine if you did just watch episode 3 and weren't really aware of the original trilogy, and that's just how it ends with every one of our characters being completely fucked, and the galaxy's just fucked, and the last thing you see is just this baby that you don't know who the baby is. Like, imagine if you didn't know who that baby was, or what was gonna happen next, and that's just the end of this trilogy. Everyone being fucked, the Empire being rising, like, it just ends with, because the whole point of these whole trilogy is just set up the next trilogy with completely superfluous details that just detract from it, it cannot end this with any kind of closure. And it doesn't. It doesn't end with any kind of closure. And that just brings me to my final thoughts of this whole experience of rewatching all 3 of these movies, is that they're pointless. It's crazy how pointless these are. How little I feel like I've gained out of watching them. How flawed they are at the very core of what they are supposed to be. It's just such a wildly unnecessary origin story that cuts out a huge amount of even the origin. Like, essentially, these movies exist for to do 2 things. All 3 of these movies. And for both these things, the first one is pointless. The first of these movies is so unnecessary in terms of accomplishing anything. But they're there to set up the backstory, essentially, the origins of Darth Vader and Palpatine. For some reason, they are essentially there to set up the backstory of our 2 antagonists for the other movies. In terms of Darth Vader, I kind of talked about this with the second one, and it continues here. I guess it gives us his origin. It explains why he's in that silly suit, but, not silly, I like the Darth Vader suit, but, it's just that he was this Jedi who gets really pissed off, falls in love with a woman for no reason, and then and then he gets kind of manipulated by an evil space wizard guy into, because like it's his origin, but his origin is so stupid. And then it's the origin of the Emperor and the rise of the Empire, but that one is even worse because one, we basically skip the actual origin. Like, we see his rise to power, the Emperor, except not really. At the start of the movie, he's already a senator, like I said. Why is it that the first movie had to show us him becoming the chancellor, but we can just take it as an, oh, right, that he's the senator? You know what I mean? It's like, why are we considering some of this important, but not others? And in terms of him becoming... They completely skipped the other most important part, which is that at the start of these movies, he's already an evil space wizard. Where the fuck is that coming from? Why is it okay for that to just be taken as a given, that he's already a super powerful Sith Lord, but we can't just take it that he's the Emperor? We have to see the origins of the Empire, but not that. The part where he becomes magic. I once heard, I don't remember where I heard this, but supposedly George Lucas said that essentially there's a line where Padme says, like, this is how democracy dies, with roaring applause. And that's a good line. But apparently George Lucas once said that, like, getting to that line is the point of these whole movies. He said that he wanted to show or explore how like dictatorships rise and democracies die with applause. People like that, and that's what this is supposed to show. And if that's the case, George Lucas has no idea how democracies turn to dictatorships. Because according to him, how it happens is an evil space wizard becomes a senator and then secretly, through unknown means, manipulates a company into invading a planet so that people will, for some reason, make him the chancellor, and then he secretly, through unknown means, gets a bunch of people to start a war, which he is secretly conducting. He's secretly in charge of both sides of this war, so that he can secretly, through unknown means, get another guy to take over that other army so that they can be murdered, so that he can blame another group of space monks and kill them all, and then declare that he's the emperor and everyone will be okay with it. That's how that happens. Okay, so I have to end this video. Final thoughts on the Star Wars trilogy prequels. They're really shockingly bad, and I genuinely think Star Wars is better if you ignore that they exist. If I was going to show Star Wars to someone who'd never seen it before, I would show them the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, and I just genuinely don't think I would ever show them these three movies. They're bad. They're bad.